We already have on stage Mr. Deepak Ramanathan, Vice President, Customer Advisory, Asia Pacific SAS. He advises organizations across industries on analytics and big data strategies to create the impactful business outcomes. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, and thank you for staying back. My name is Deepak Ramanathan. I'm VP for Asia Pacific, and I work with SAS. So SAS has its histories. If you are familiar with SAS, we started off in 1976, and it was an acronym actually for Statistical and Analytic Systems, right, which became SAS. So July this year, SAS will be 50 years old, and our DNA has essentially always been analytics. So I think the previous speaker from HSBC was talking about the standard analytics that were always being used, things like your standard logistic regressions, generalized linear models, decision trees, neural networks. We grew up in that particular world back in the 80s and the 90s. And then of course in the year 2000, the name changes, right? I mean, like we used to be called quantitative analysts, then it became data miners, then it became data scientists. The name changes, but the role doesn't, right, in terms of what the outcome is expected. So I'm going to talk about where we are, right, and why we are here and why this excitement in the market. So large language models are here to stay. Again, like in the last 2 years, as you can imagine, it's been a race to the bottom, a race to the top in terms of the models being able to sort of become better in reasoning, becoming better in helping out. But what they essentially do is it's a passive tool, right? It's a very passive tool. They can't access your data because you're running across. They do not follow business rules because it's based on prediction, so there's no business rules in there, and they can't act, right? That's not possible, right? They don't act. They just give you information. There's no action taking place at the end of it. So they're wonderful for reasoning, like I said, and wonderful for understanding larger concepts, wonderful for doing your homework, and wonderful for making the next recipe, but they're not really there in the business context yet, right? Now, large language models have now evolved to what we call AI agents, right? These AI agents now, they have the agency now to cut or to act and perform complex tasks, right? These agents can take actions, right? They are here, iterate to changing environments. As the environments change, they actually are able to manage that, and then they execute complex tasks. Now, it's important, right? I will be betraying my age here, but sometimes agentic AI is like a 1980s channel where it was about the 7 blind men of Hindustan, which is what exactly is as they feel an elephant. But that's the same thing for agentic AI. A definition of it is they can take action, they can iterate to changing environments, and they evolve complex tasks. And why now? Why are these agents so important right now? Once again, a bank takes hundreds of thousands of decisions every day, right? And those decisions are getting more and more complex, either due to regulatory reasons or either the dynamic environment that's changing or new technology breakthroughs that are coming in that serve as data inputs in many ways. So there is a rising complexity of these business decisions. Customer expectations for real-time personalization. Right? That is an expectation from customers, which is, give me a real-time personalization, understand who we are. This is no different from 10 years ago, right? Real-time personalization is not a new topic I'm talking about. But the expectation of customers to have it, given the environment that they live in, they are looking at real-time personalization. And the environments are dynamic, right? And adaptability. By dynamic environments, I mean regulatory information comes in, rules are set in, the rules keep changing. So how, in that dynamic environment, how do you understand what the rise of the agents are? So in the enterprise world, you need more than complete autonomy. So you need decisioning, traceability, and explainability, right? And this is incredibly important because as bankers, or if there are any data science people who used to build statistical models, in a bank, if you're doing a credit decisioning, you earlier could not use neural networks because neural networks was hard to do traceability or explain a neural network, right? That's why you had some techniques to sort of understand where those variables are coming from. That extends now even to large language models, right? You have to figure out what was this decision made and why was it made. And the LLM-powered agents often hallucinate and they lack consistency, as it was stated many, many times before up here, and ignore business logic. The other one is risk mitigation and control. Now, why is this important? What if the agent is wrong and provides a wrong feedback to the customer or in an internal process? In enterprise environments, so if you don't act without any oversight, that becomes a liability. So risk mitigation is incredibly important and control over that. And lastly but not least is governance and audibility. Now, SAS as an organization, like I said earlier on, we've been doing this for 50 years. Our industries that we serve are banking, financial services, insurance, public sector, health and life sciences. These are all highly regulated industries. So for us, when we sort of come up with any analytics that we have to do, analytics solutions, audibility, governance becomes incredibly important for us because that's our DNA. And that's what customers are expecting of us, because how do you govern this? So similarly, we are looking at how do we govern these kind of large language models, and from an agent's perspective, how do we conceptualize and struggle in the enterprise environment? So we do believe that the future of enterprise AI agents, it's going to be hybrid, right? And what I mean by hybrid is that these are collaborative agents, which is, as I mentioned on stage a little while back, they will work with humans, which is often called your humans or human in the loop and humans out of the loop. So there'll be a period of time where humans will be in the loop and will have to be in the loop. And over a period of time, some of those processes can become automated. So these are collaborative agents that will work with humans, right? But there's human intervention. And you'll see that a lot today you see that with your fraud models, right? A lot of times your fraud models might throw up a false positive, and a human intervention will actually happen in there to counter that false positive. So that's why we are looking at, even for LLMs or for agents, you're going to see the same thing happening in there. Now, what we look at from an agentic AI is around what I mentioned earlier on, around decisioning. So agentic AI will help your decisioning support in terms of not only doing the decisioning part of it, but making sure that the decision is back in the loop, which means you have a counter in terms of what decisions were made, how were they made, what was the path that was taken to reach that decision. That's a sort of a fundamental aspect for us. The governance piece about it is equally important, right? Governance in terms of the path made for the decision, how is that model being run, and essentially around a lot of tech in terms of understanding exactly the function. So it's more of from AI agents, they become a science experiment to actually getting it operationalized. Now, I don't mean this to be like an eye test for you, but this is essentially what we look at the different blocks in terms of the building blocks, right? So you have a decisioning piece, the human AI balance that I spoke about, and finally the governance piece in there, and all the building blocks. So the building blocks include, I think Rishi mentioned earlier on, the data infrastructure, the tools, the semantic layer, and then of course comes the design part, which is the human in the loop, where you actually design all these agents and the agentic workflows, and then finally deployment and interaction of those. Underlying these is essentially the governance pieces in there, right? Across all the way from deployment to the data piece in that. And that's important because the regulator is going to ask you lineage, right? If an actual decision was made, what was the lineage done in order to come to that particular decision? And of course, the reasoning layer, which we call the LLMs. And the LLMs, we can look at LLMs deciding in the cloud environments, but we're also looking at a lot of financial service institutions pulling those large language models back into their organization and pretty much running it within the organization, because to them, this becomes IP for them and therefore is of enormous value. So From a SAS perspective, we look at agentic AI being fundamentally helping your whole decisioning narrative, and more importantly, sort of speeding up those processes, those decisions that you want to make, and at the same time providing that level of auditability and governability. We are happy to talk to you more about it. We have a booth next door. Please feel to swing by if you have any further questions. But thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the day. Enjoy the conference. And for those who would be winning awards in the later part of the evening, congratulations in advance. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.